The bass rippling music was thundering, like a living pulse moving through the atmosphere. This was more than just a party. It was the occasion of the time of year when the city's most rich people gathered to show off their wealth. Ella, 23, like peacocks on exhibit, kept her head down, swerving between dazzling dresses and dapper jackets as she held a plate of champagne flutes in balance, was accustomed to hiding in some spots. The rich laughed at the server in this way, served, and the gap that separated them was sharper than before, but that line tonight would break. Ella's hold became more firm as she went up to the group of people around the pool. Leo, the king of conceit, was one of them. Sneering had the ability to go farther than she detested working these gigs, and any knives. However, her mother's medical expenses and the school payments for my brother were not paid themselves while she presented Leo's tray. Hey, the voice was louder than the music. Everyone who enjoys a good laugh. He abruptly pushed Ella's tray swayed while her feet fumbled to, on the slippery poolside tiles, find equilibrium. The shimmering seemed to slow down with time. Champagne glasses glistening as if they were falling, stars before collapsing, and then the shock of cold water engulfing. She struck the pool loudly with her body. Splash gasped as she was filled with frigid liquid, dragged her down above her ears, and the globe burst out laughing, and Ella emerged. With her hair glued to her face, wet uniform sticking clumsily to her, depict the group of people gathering near the edge of the pool, their derision piercing the crisp night air, and Leo was there, putting his smile front and center, as calm as a razor, let Cinderella unwind. Mockingly raised his glass in jest. It's only a little water for the celebration. Ella's face was scorched by a mixture of anger and humiliation were coursing through her. All of her instincts begged her to leave, back to strike out, but she bit her instead. Tongue, this was not the first instance in which she has been degraded by someone such as Leo. It wouldn't be her final escape from her wet sneakers squelching in the pool as she stooped to get the broken. Her hand shook, but not because of the glass. Chilly, but given the work required to hold herself together, have a peek at her. Behind her, whispering, does she even belong here? She ought to have remained here. Another person contributed their harsh remarks in the kitchen. The laughing stokes the internal fire. Ella tightened her jaw and continued to, slowly, gently collecting the fragments, purposefully maintaining her dignity despite being beaten. Stayed whole. She refused to give them the joy of witnessing her break. But afterward, when she leaned to retrieve the final fragment of glass, the audience became quiet. Presence pierced the conversation like a. Ella didn't look up when the sword went through the fabric initially, but she sensed the change in the atmosphere, the weight of a significant individual. When she looked up at last, she spotted Archer. Malcolm, the mysterious presenter of the stood near the periphery of the crowd in the evening. His fitted suit appeared to sparkle beneath the strings, and his piercing, cold eyes scanned the situation. People muttered his name as they assessed his look, such as a prayer of reverence, and even the most guests who were confident appeared to falter under his examination of what's happening here. Archer's. Although the voice was calm, it had a hint of edge. A steal with implications in sight. Leo, taken by surprise and tried a casual. Archer, just having a little fun, no big deal. Archer's eyes shifted to Ella, who was still holding the tray on her knees. With shattered glass, he murmured in a voice lowering to a risky level appears to. Ella took a hard gulp, more than simply for pleasure. Even though she was drenched, her throat was dry. The bone, she was at a loss for words, or did she say anything at all if she should? Archer called his attention. You fall completely on her now. She paused, looking at Leo, who had changed his expression from arrogant to anxious, but then she recalled her brother, mother, and every second. No, Ella. She had suffered for their sake. Stated in a firm voice, he shoved me the The ensuing hush was deafening. Archer turned back, his eyes darkening. Leo, it was a joke when you shoved her. Raised his palms defensively as he sputtered. Everyone found it amusing, right? Looked about for assistance, but the throng had ceased their previous amusement. Archer stepped in discomfort instead. Nearer, he was looming over Leo, making fun of someone who puts in a lot of effort too. Leo, you think it's a joke to make a living? He was about to reply, but Archer stopped talking to him. You're going to leave now. Leo could object to two black-suited males. Showed up at the Archer signal and flanked Leo, who sputtered angrily while the crowd separated as they took him away, them with enough tension to sever. Using a knife as Leo vanished, Archer returned his attention to Ella, asking whether she was okay. Asked in a softer tone, and Ella nodded. I'm okay even if her hands are still shaking. Despite her voice faltering, she managed. You don't look good, Archer remarked. His keen eyes scanned her soaked. Figure join me, Ella paused, and I still need to finish, Archer brought up in. I believe you've accomplished more than enough tonight, and he offered a. Ella took it after a moment's hesitation, allowing him to lead her out of the water, and the crowd's curious gaze as they entered the more subdued hallways of the mansion. Ella was left wondering, what did Archer do to help her, and why? Malcolm is a man who has everything he needs. Observe in a person like her, and beyond. More importantly, what did he expect in exchange? Archer led Ella into a private room. Nestled away from the cacophony of the party, it was quieter, and the air was colder. If the actual room was located in a separate reality from the pandemonium outside. After they left, Archer shut the door and motioned for her to take a seat on a cushion. I don't like the leather chair beside the fireplace. Fight, he murmured in a tone that was almost softer now. Ella sat laughingly, her body drenched, uniform clinging to her in an uncomfortable way. Her damp shoes and skin seemed out of place, leaving the pricey rug with faint stains. But Archer didn't appear to notice, or he carefully filled a glass with amber liquid from a decanter of crystals and gave it to. I don't drink, she said, shaking her head. He smiled slightly and added, it's apple juice. Ella tugged at the corner of his mouth, blinked before taking the glass in a. As she sipped Archer, she said, thank you. Sat down in the chair across from her, examining her closely enough to make his piercing blue eyes appeared to see right through her that you put in a lot of effort. He started to slant forward a little. Observe it in the manner in which you conduct yourself. The pride of precision, even when the globe around you behaves as though you're unaware of how invisible. Ella gazed at him. To reply, inform me that he carried on with his quiet, steady voice. What motivates you? And why? Do you put up with this? She paused, the juice's warmth in her hands. Calmed herself, and at last she spoke. To my family, her tone stern. My brother is still alive, and my mother is ailing. Someone has to keep things at school. Proceeding, and that somebody is my Archer. The expression changed a little, flitting across his face, unreadable. Your tenacity is impressive, but allow me to. I would like to know if these giving up something will result in the life you desire. To constrict her throat, but it's not about. My family is the focus of what I desire. Requirements and the consequences of burnout. Archer inquired in a sharper tone now when you have nothing left to offer him. Words struck her more forcefully than she anticipated. She tightened her grip as she gazed down. I have no choice, she said, referring to the glass. Quietly, Archer, there's always an option. Responded that sometimes it's simply hidden behind the surface of fear and expectation. Ella cast a suspicious gaze up at him, invading her thoughts. Why are you even speaking to me, telling me this? Because of what he said about leaning back in his chair makes me think of someone I used to know a lot like you. Someone who put up the necessary effort to. Bone felt that they needed to bear what transpired was the weight of the entire globe. She asked them, and the Archer's eyes clouded. His mouth tensing up a little, they snapped. Ella's chest constricted under the strain of. For a brief while, the two sat in. The only sound in the silence is a slight crackle. Of the fireplace, I would prefer that. Archer responded. Whatever happened to you? Ella frowned. Deserve better. And what? It would be best if he stood and walked. Approaching a tiny desk and taking out a folder back to her, he put it on. What's on the table between them? It appears that Ella paused earlier. When I opened it, I found documents neatly. Structured description of a role at one of. The title of Archer Charitable Foundations. Wasn't extravagant, but the pay was higher. More than she could ever hope to make in. This can't be true about her current employment. She whispered, her fingers shaking as she turned the pages, and it's really. I need someone, the genuine Archer told her. With your perseverance and diligence on my team member who is aware of what it is to battle for a greater cause than themselves, but she asked, why me? Voice with a hint of incredulity, because tonight, you've proven yourself, he remarked. Just because I think that. Praising people who cut through the clutter. This was everything, and Ella's mind was racing. She had always hoped to get away from the struggle to support her family without giving up her soul. But that seemed too truthful. But what's the catch? Archer smirked as she asked, her eyes narrowing. There isn't a faintly intelligent question there. The sole requirement is that you utilize and accept assistance when it is provided. To create the life you're worthy of, Ella looked at him in an attempt to read the with genuineness in his gaze. She desired to believe him, but years of hardship had taught her to be cautious when giving, particularly from someone with the authority of. Take your time, Archer Malcolm advised. Standing considerate, but keep in mind, such opportunities are rare. Frequently, as he turned to go, he stopped at the entrance. Additionally, don't allow someone to make you feel insignificant compared to Leo and the world. He was certainly not you with that. Gone, leaving Ella to bear the burden alone. Her heart raced as she made her choice. Wearing, she gazed at the folder. Between optimism and skepticism, this might shift everything, but how much does the night cost? Had begun with shame, but now it provided a hint of something more. Ella St. looked at something astonishing. Long after Archer had left her, she looked at the folder. Mind a tornado of feelings, the commotion of the gathering had vanished into thin air. Behind the hefty doors of the, as she lounged, her fingers touched the smooth paper, and she was unable to resist. I wonder whether this was a complex joke. Character test intended to determine how. Anxiety over how long it would endure. She turned to face a mountain of additional bills. Found Max crouched over a table in his room. Textbooks on desks arranged in front of. When she entered, his head snapped up. He rubbed his head and replied, "You're home late." "Yes, Ella, the party went on for a long time," said, placing the folder on the. Max asked, glancing at the table. "What's that?" "Papers." Ella paused inquisitively. "It's an chance for anything to change." Max leaned forward to get things for us. His eyes grew wide as he scanned the documents. His reading of the details, Ella, revealed this. "Incredible, are you really thinking about it?" "I'm not sure," although she acknowledged getting into a. "What if it's not what it seems like, Chair? What if I accept this risk, and it turns out to be merely another way for someone to take advantage of me?" Max. Softened expression. "You've spent done everything for us throughout our lives, perhaps. Perhaps you should take a chance for. If this helps you, help everyone of us, so why not find the worst thing that could happen?" Ella gave a small smile. "You're reaching out to shake his hair." Intended to be the younger brother's stop. Max smiled because he was so knowledgeable, yet his eyes. "Were you serious, Ella? You deserve this. As night falls, don't let fear stop you." Ella sat in the kitchen and stretched. Table with the folder open before her. She considered every possibility and detail, risk and gain. By the time the initial sunlight filtered through the window, she made her choice 2 days ago. Afterwards, Ella was outside the tower. glass structure that contained one of Archer's. The air was one of Malcolm's numerous foundations. Sharp, and she had electric nerves, but she reminded herself of her purpose for being here. This was about more than simply her, regarding her family and demonstrating self that she was better capable of. The receptionist welcomed her inside, kindly, and guided her to a meeting room. There were pictures on the walls of schools being constructed as part of community projects, smiling hospitals that get funds, portraits of individuals whose lives had been altered. A little later, Archer entered with his. He grinned, his presence as imposing as ever. I wasn't sure if you would come when he saw her. Ella stood and looked him in the eye. Trust one wasn't certain either, but I'm. Archer nodded here, indicating that she should. Take a seat comfortably, and let's begin the next. They talked about her role for a few hours, more coordinating than she had anticipated. Initiatives involving communities and discovering the inner workings of philanthropy was difficult, but it was also a chance to create a genuine effect. As the conference came to a close, Archer gave her a welcome key card to the team. Ella, I think you will perform fantastic. Ella took the card with her heart here. Was it a fresh chapter, pounding? Opportunity to change her tale for months. Ella thrust herself into her as it passed. Task she picked up fast, earning the regard from her co-workers and even Archer himself. The project she coordinated resulted in significant change to impoverished areas, and for the first time in years, she thought she was genuinely changing stuff about the house. Enhanced the health of her mother as well. Stabilized after receiving improved care, and Max excelled in school without being constrained by the anxiety of unstable finances. But Ella's most significant change was she wasn't merely surviving on the inside. One evening, she was prospering. Following an exhausting day at the foundation, Ella stood on her apartment's balcony, observing the lights over the city, extended indefinitely as a reminder of how. Her phone buzzed, indicating how far she had come. Comment from Archer. Fantastic job on. The Rivercrest project continues to take the lead. With your fire, Ella grinned. Setting down the phone for the first time, she gave herself permission to be proud, not only for her actions, but also for who she had transformed herself and climbed above the humiliation, the battle, the exit, and she wasn't finished yet. She was truly desperate, but Archer's. She heard the words, don't let someone make you feel inferior. The world, and most certainly not oneself. She clutched the folder and closed it, firmly as she stood, unsure of whether she was entering a trap or going on a lifeline. But one thing about her was certain, that she wouldn't remain in the shadows anymore. When she unlocked the door and returned to the gathering, the music struck her like a wave of atmosphere. The forced laughing grew louder, and the visitors were exerting every effort to remove the uneasy recollection of what had occurred, but Ella was able to. She moved with their staircases, which she can still feel, purposefully squelching her wet shoes against the marble flooring while she navigated in the direction of the service area. She had to complete this task so she can go with her head high. But as she walked past the pool once again, something or someone caught her eye. Leo. He was having a disagreement with a security guard. Officers by the gate, his cheeks flushed with annoyance. His haughty swagger was. Desperation took its place as he attempted to force himself back into the gathering. I'm a visitor. Leo let out a harsh, whining bark. You even recognize me, Ella frosted. As the situation developed, it was nearly beautiful to see him writhe in this way for a time when she thought about passing, letting him be on his own. But then, she had a sneaking thought that made her heart race as she walked up. Her head was held high in the scenario, and prior to, she said to wait, so the guards could stop her. The guards were taken aback by her abrupt. Leo made an interjection to his expression, shifting from bewilderment to rage when he seen her. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be mopping floors? Sneered. Or anything else? Ella disregarded him, and instead, this individual spoke to the guards. Attacked me before, pushing me into the pool during my workday, I believe, mister. Malcolm is interested in knowing if you're. It was exhausting to let him return to Leo's face. Of color. That's absurd, check. The guards looked at each other while lying, obviously unsure. You may ask, mister. Ella added her voice to Malcolm's voice. Calm and collected, or allow him to return and clarify why the guards. I apologize, sir. I bowed and took Leo's arms. Wait, Leo. You're not welcome here tonight. His voice cracked as he battled with. You can't just but his indignation. The demonstrations were halted when the guards. Ella watched as they escorted him out the gate. As he vanished into the darkness, his yells fading into the background for the first time in what seemed like an eternity. Ella gave herself a tiny victory smile, but her moment of contentment didn't last long until she felt someone touch her, looked over his shoulder, and saw one of the Daniel, a friend who had additional servers, been collaborating with her for years. He said in a quiet voice, Ella, what just occurred back there to confirm the trash has been removed, she said. Daniel didn't like her stern but gentle tone. Instead of laughing, he looked at the folder. What's that, Ella? She was still holding. She was hesitant to tell anyone about Archer's proposal, but in part because she didn't know how to describe it simply. She said, I need to think about something. Finally, Daniel cautioned people to exercise caution. Similar to him, don't distribute handouts without awaiting a response to his statements. Caused a knot of uncertainty in her heart, but Ella pushed Malcolm away. Wasn't like Leo, as she had hoped. Okay, she said, despite her weight. Personal doubt persisted into the night. Ella completed her shift wearing. Her mind was reliving the events in silence. Several times by the time she left the city and the mansion, she sensed the distant skyline glimmering, as though she had lived a lifetime in a. She arrived at the bus stop a few hours later. She took out the folder once more and flipped through it. Via the pages. The terms were clear, and the offer was genuine. Nevertheless, a tiny voice in her mind. Is it too good to be true? Murmured. Ella boarded the bus when it arrived. Her damp uniform attracting several curious looks as she sat down unconcerned. When her phone buzzed, she sent a text. Mom is doing better today, Brother Max. I appreciate everything and I adore you, She worked because her chest constricted. Why she put up with individuals like Leo is so difficult. However, Archer might have been correct there. As the bus rolled, there was another way. Ella gazed out through the city streets. The window is securely gripping the folder. Whatever decision she made, she was aware of one. She was definitely done being. She wasn't just going to be invisible. Survive. She would become Ella. Got off the bus and strolled through the peaceful streets in the direction of her tiny apartment. The significance of the choice she had to make. The folder appeared to pulsate as it grew heavier. She held a tangible memento of she stood at a crossroads and had spent years of giving up for her family, struggling for their survival, and now for. Initially, there was a proposal to make things simpler, but was it actually possible? She has faith in someone as strong as Archer. Malcolm, she opened the door to the apartment and crept inside without a word, not wanting to awaken her younger self or her mother. The apartment was small, Brother Max. Worn furniture that is spotless throughout, referring to a family that might have to deal with. Ella peeked into what they had. Her mother was sleeping in her room. For once, regular breathing is an indication that the new drug may be having some effect. Ella felt a sense of relief, yet it was promptly succeeded by the familiar